Hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews, movie reviews from a regular dude. I'm doing another reaction today. This is called, a lot of people like the Mandela Effect videos, so this is called the 5 Scariest Glitch in the Matrix Events You Need to Hear. Let's check this one out in 1, 2, 3. Headphones.
What's going on, you guys? My name's Ty Knots and welcome to Top 5 Unknowns, 5 Glitch in the Matrix stories. And be sure to stick around for number 2 because it's actually a personal story of mine. Number 5. I was driving at night trying to get home from a friend's house. My friend lived out in the country, so I had to take back country roads home. I was never a proficient driver at night, so when I got lost, I wasn't surprised. I tried bringing up Google Maps, but I didn't have 3G coverage out there. So I decided I was probably going in the wrong direction just from gut feeling, so I got out of the car to look around. At the time, it was May, but when I got out, it was extremely cold. The weather had been mild all week. Even at night, it was brisk at the absolute worst. The second I stepped out of the car, though, I knew everything was wrong. Not only was it unimaginably cold for that time of year, but the woods below the hill my car was on were gone. They'd been there just moments before I stepped out, but now there were 4 large houses where the patch of trees used to be. The houses, though, didn't look like houses I was used to seeing in the area. They had domed roofs with skylights in the middle. They looked kind of like
we went into another dimension.
Kind of like what you'd see in a classic igloo. I started to panic and called my dad, but the call went nowhere. I'd forgotten that I lost coverage a few miles back. Then I heard a voice below me. I looked down at the houses and a small floodlight had been turned on in one of the front lawns of the houses. This guy was standing outside with a dog. He was talking to the dog in this language I'd never heard before. Now, I'm no linguist and I couldn't hear him very well, but it sounded pretty much alien. Those elongated vowels and chirping, for lack of a better word. I was absolutely dumbfounded and freaking out at that point. I was considering throwing myself off that hill, just hoping I'd hit my head and wake back up in my car.
I think this is just, these are just stories.
Freezing and panicking. I rushed back into my car and drove for another few minutes before passing by another car. That car, though, was not the kind that we would see today. There was a weird symbol on the windshield and lights that were accenting the chassis. It had no outboard mirrors and didn't make the normal sound as it passed by. I can't even describe what the sound was. It wasn't like a whoosh from normal cars, it was almost kind of like it was slithering. I think the driver noticed that my car was super different too, because as I instinctively slowed down to get a better look, so did he, and that was it for me. I stopped on the side of the road for a few seconds, took a lot of deep breaths, turned off my car and sat for quite some time, but eventually worked up the nerve to get out of the car again. This time it was barely cool out and I could recognize my surroundings. I was just about 20 minutes away from home. I walked down the road a ways, around a bend, and up another small hill, and I could see a familiar billboard just out in the distance. The problem is that I was way too afraid that if I got back in my car, things would change again. So I was determined to stay outside. I thought just to be safe, I'll open the car door, grab the flashlight, and walk back down the hill around the bend, but when I turned back around, my car was gone. It occurred to me that after I shut the car door, I hadn't looked back at all. So maybe I'd just forgotten its position. So I kept walking back, but no car. I checked my phone and it had been hours since I left and my parents were surely in bed asleep, so I called my friend and he picked me up on the side of the road. Instead of telling him the truth, I told him some made-up story about how my car had died on the road going into the woods.
This would make a good movie.
So I decided to hoof it home and gave up by the time my folks had gone to bed, so I had to call him. He laughed at my misfortune and stupidity and said he'd come help me look for the car the next day. I led my dad on a wild goose chase for that car for the majority of the next day before my dad gave up and said it must have been stolen and reported it. To this day, the car has never been found because, as far as I know, it's on the side of the road in what I firmly believe to be an alternate dimension.
Yeah, this is just stories that people have written. But that would make a damn good movie.
Number 4.
I think.
About 3 weeks ago, I was driving with a friend of mine in the passenger seat to a cinema in a nearby city. There were very few pedestrians and cars around at that time of day. It was dark outside, but due to the city lights, there weren't any problems seeing clearly. We were discussing different stuff, making jokes, but nothing unusual. Then I had to stop at a crossroad for the traffic light to go green again, when I randomly looked to my side in front of me and noticed something really weird. You know how on some of the traffic poles there's a button that you can press if you want to cross the road? Well, there was one on the pole, but just like a meter or so next to it, there was somehow another one just floating in the air at the same height as the one parallel to it. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. I just stared at it the whole time we waited there. I wasn't even able to say anything in that moment because I was still trying to comprehend it. When the light turned green again after what felt like an eternity, I still looked at it while driving past it, and it also changed my perspective, but it was very clearly floating. After we drove past, it was finally able to speak again and just stuttered to my friend that I saw something impossible. I tried to describe it to her, but she just shrugged it off. I'm extremely confident in what I saw, and I still have to think about it to this day. It was deeply disturbing in a way, kind of like when you're in a dream and you notice that it's a dream, and things start to change and kind of morph around you. I was scared that I would wake up at any moment right after that experience. Number 3. In the early 80s, my mother and father lived in Monrovia, Liberia, in northern Africa for a while. My father used to ride a motorcycle to navigate the roads through the jungle areas. One day, he and my mother were out, and suddenly his motorcycle started sputtering and stopped. They tried for over 20 minutes, but the motorcycle just simply wouldn't start. This is way before the time of cell phones, so they couldn't call anyone for help, and they were miles away from the nearest village. But suddenly, a very large African man with a beard carrying a walking stick came out of the brush and asked my father, "What's wrong with your machine?" My father explains that it won't start. The man asked, "What will you do?" And my father says, "I don't know, we're too far to walk." The man puts his hand on the motorcycle and says, "I think you should try it again. It will start now." My father's confused but tries it again, and this time the motorcycle revs up, engine on and working like normal. He looks back at the man and says something along the lines of, "Wow, I don't know what you did, but thank you." He then asked for his name, and the man told my dad, "My name is Moses." He starts to walk forward down the road, and my dad says that he looked away for a moment and turned back, and the man was absolutely gone, nowhere to be seen. He said he could see very clearly a long ways down the road, but the man was nowhere to be found.
And then after that, he went and parted the Red Sea.
Number 2. This is actually a personal story that happened to a relative of mine about 10 years ago. I've been wanting to share this story with you guys on Top 5 Unknowns for years, but never found a good time to do it until now. So sometime around 2008 or 2009, my cousin Melissa was taking her son for a day out shopping. At the time, he was only about 1 or 2 years old and still in a car seat. She's driving along a very long old highway located somewhere in northern Florida. There are no shops, gas stations, or literally anything close by. It's just a straight stretch of road surrounded by nothing but trees. About midway through the highway, Melissa hears something strange in the back seat. She looks into the mirror and sees that her son is having a seizure. She immediately begins to panic, swears over to the side of the road, and runs out of the car towards the back seat. She managed to get her son out of the seat, but had absolutely no idea what to do from here. She had no cell service to call for help, and there was literally no one around. But just as she begins to fear for the worst, a nurse and doctor come running up and ask Melissa what's going on. They see that her son is having a seizure, so they grab him, place him on his side, and keep him stable until the seizure passes. As soon as he begins to calm down, they tell Melissa to take him directly to a hospital. She immediately turns around to thank them, and no one is there. There's no car parked near hers, nor did she hear a car pull up or drive away. Within a literal split second, the amount of time it took her to turn her body around to face them, they'd completely vanished. There wasn't so much as another car passing by on the highway. Absolute stillness and nothing is all that surrounded her. Also, what are the literal odds of something like this even happening? A nurse and a doctor just happening to walk up right as a child is in a crisis in the middle of a deserted highway. To this day, she has no explanation for what happened other than some ethereal experience or a major glitch in the Matrix. Her son is now fine and lives a completely normal life, having suffered no damage from the seizure. He's never had another one either. Number 1. So last night, I had to put my son down, and I went back into my living room. My husband was at his computer playing a game, and I can't remember what it's called, but he loves it. After sitting down for a moment, I go into the kitchen to grab a small snack, before I realize that I need to use the restroom. So I go and grab my phone and look at my husband, and he's still on his computer. I told him I'm going to use the restroom as I always do, mostly so if he needs me, he doesn't have to yell and wake up the kid. He looked at me and nodded, and I go to the bathroom. To get to my bathroom from the living room, there's a long, narrow hallway. You can't go any other way, and it's hard to sneak past someone. There's 2 bathrooms though, one in the hall and one in the master bedroom. We use the master bedroom more than our guest guest bathroom. So I go into my room and turn towards the bathroom door. It's dark with a small light on by my bed, and I run into my husband. I got scared for a moment thinking it was someone else, but it was very obviously him. I shrieked, but luckily not too loud as I didn't want to wake up the kid. He says I had to go to the bathroom, and it seemed like he was rolling his eyes at me. I just dart from the bathroom back to the living room, all the while whispering in my confusion. There was no one there at all. The game was paused and everything was right where he had left it. Of course, my husband is confused and I explained to him what just happened. I think I spooked him a bit, but he hasn't really said anything else about it. Paranormal or not, I'm not really sure what happened. He was very clearly playing a game, but as I walked down the hallway, he was then very clearly in the bedroom. I can't make any sense of this, but I sure hope it doesn't happen again.
This is doppelganger. Anyways, let me know some weird things that have happened to you. I've had some, and I'm going to tell a little story about my dad right now. He used to drive long-haul truck, and he was telling me a story about how when he was driving one night, he was really good at staying awake for long periods of time, and he had been awake for a couple days trying to, get everything done so he could get home. And he said he remembered pulling over and picking up a hitchhiker and driving down, just continuing on and talking to this hitchhiker and everything. And at one point he looked out the window and looked back and there was nobody sitting there. And he had supposedly been talking to this guy for hours and hours and hours. And it scared him so bad that he pulled the truck over and got back in the sleeper and fell asleep and woke up like 12 hours later because he imagined the whole thing to try and keep awake. Another time he told me he was so tired and he was driving down the road and he actually saw a hand in the road stand up right in front of his face. That's another time he pulled over, got in the sleeper, and just went to sleep for a long time. And the one experience that I had, it's nothing really exciting, but I was parked in my car, and this was, I had just graduated high school, maybe a year or two before this, and I parked at this little convenience store in the town where I went to high school. And I got out of my car and went in the convenience store and got back to my car afterwards and sat down in there. And I'd been sitting there for a minute and I felt the car rock. And I looked back in the mirror and everything and I couldn't see anybody and it rocked again. And so I got out of the car and walked around it and there was nobody there. It couldn't have been, I don't know what caused this. Because the car, I mean, it wasn't just slight, it rocked. It rocked hard. So I don't know what was going on. I wasn't on a hill, I was straight. So, I don't know. Let me know some weird things that may have happened to you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And when you subscribe, tap that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. See you next time. Yeah!